right. This is Team Brawner. We have Wyatt, Nell, Sawyer, and then down here we've got Lano. Lano's eating her breakfast as well. All right, team. What's your favorite thing about Dad?
Yeah, you go first. That he gets money for our team. That we play superheroes. That Dad gives me a scratch back.
What does Daddy, and this is something that Nell asked about, how does Daddy get money for our team?
He goes and gets it from the apartment and works so hard that he gets some money. And we don't always see it when we come home because it's already in his wallet.
Gets money from the apartments. How else does Daddy get money for our team?
By working and doing meetings. Lots of meetings.
Lots of meetings. What do you wish? Go ahead now.
And he also gets money by being quiet downstairs in his office. And then when he goes to them, oh, that wasn't it, Daddy. And so then he also gets money by traveling and seeing other apartments.
By going to the other apartments. What do you wish Daddy did more of?
I wish Daddy did more of, you go first now. I wish he did more of superheroes, and I wish he did superheroes every single night and more of it. I wish, he would, sorry, you go first. I wish he would, I wish he would, do better, by, at the airport giving us tickets.
Soy, you have anything? Okay.
We get marbles every single day.
You wish I would give you more marbles so we can go to Pizza Pub? Gotta earn those marbles. Can you guys say goodbye?
Bye! Ooh, can we see the video, Dad?
Lano, say goodbye.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. We have got some kiddos on the show today, starting us off right. Got Rourke on my shoulders, Adam behind me. We have Wyatt hanging over with Matt Brawner, who I'm looking forward to getting to know a little bit more today. Boys are getting introduced to each other right before the call, so it's going to be a lot of fun to be able to see how this goes. But Matt, if you can, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about you. Tell us about your family and your business.
Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you so much for having me. My name is Matt Brawner, based up just north of the Twin Cities in Isani, Minnesota. I have here my oldest son, Wyatt. On my team, we have my beautiful wife, Mandy, and then we've got 3 girls after Wyatt. So Wyatt's the oldest of 4. We have Nell, Sawyer, and then little Lano showed up just this past November. So she is 6 months and to let us know that she's here and wants to be a part of the conversation.
Of course.
I work full-time in real estate. Started out buying townhouses. I wish I could tell people, I say this a lot, that I'm so smart, I had this all planned out, but I didn't. I actually just, we can get into it as part of my story. I needed friends, and there were guys that were buying townhouses together, so I'll do that. That's a good way to meet people. Here, one townhouse turned into another, and now we own and operate multifamily properties in and around the Twin Cities and throughout the Southeast United States.
Awesome. That's sometimes the best laid plans are plans that weren't plans at all. So however it goes, and as long as you're enjoying it, it doesn't matter. So, speaking of plans that weren't plans, let's go ahead and start at the very beginning of who Matt was, because like you weren't planning to be a real estate investor and a father of 4 when you were growing up. So, talk to me a little bit about. I love to dig into like the history of who we are. So, that's something I did not tell you. The very first person I interviewed on this podcast was my dad, because I wanted people to kind of know who my dad was, where I come from, and it's just one of the reasons I love to ask other people about their dads. Some stories are horrendous, some stories are wonderful, and a little bit of mix in between, of course. But it's kind of our dads, our parents as a whole. But of course, this is focusing on the dad side of the house with this podcast. Our dads tend to really lay the tracks in one way, shape, or form for what we do as we grow up. Maybe we do exactly what they did. Maybe we do nothing like what they did, because we want to run away from what we saw. But if we can, let's dig into a little bit of your history. Tell us about your dad, maybe even your dad's dad, if you know much about him.
In Omaha, Nebraska. My dad is still living. His name is Lee Brawner. My grandpa Jack, he passed back in 2018 there. And I'm really excited to kind of key in on fathers because it's something that we work really hard on in our house. I can't talk about this without talking about my faith. I really believe that your earthly father is really important because as a child, that's the first person, and I wish I could credit the right person, these aren't my thoughts, but as a child, that's the first person I think you meet that you realize has a choice whether or not they love you, right?
Yeah.
If your mom kind of, and there's people with horrible stories out there, your mom carried you, right? Like, you have a kind of an instant connection there. But your dad is the first person that you meet of like, oh, do you accept me? Do you love me? I think that's why father wounds can be so hurtful when they do happen there. And we focus a lot on that because our goal is to align our kids with their heavenly father so that they can spend eternity with him. My dad, growing up in Omaha, Nebraska, he and I are very different in terms of our views of the world and our hobbies. And a lot of that is driven by my dad's health problems when he was growing up, and when I was growing up, excuse me. Dad, we thought we were going to lose him 3 times. Had cancer, had some really rare autoimmune diseases, and that just really limited what he could do physically as a father. Interestingly enough, as he's now in his late 70s, he's probably as healthy as he has ever been.
Nice.
But that just really kind of put him in a different position. The way my dad could fight and love our family was just to simply keep going and to keep living there. He worked as an attorney for the state of Nebraska. I highlight that because it was nothing glamorous, but what my dad could do was be present and get up every day and go to work. And that's what he did for 40 plus years. And we had some ups and downs as a family, but my dad was constant through that. And I think I respect him more and more, even though we do see the world a little bit differently, whether that's how we view our faith or what we view politically. I have come to appreciate him more as a dad as I've gotten to be a dad. My grandfather, neat guy in terms of his background. He actually worked in the meat packing plants. He was drafted in World War II, didn't serve overseas, went and taught himself how to write, so he became a newspaper writer. And then somebody with no college education who just simply with that depression era mindset in terms of how he led and provided for his family. So a guy who didn't graduate from college was able to leave his wife and family extraordinarily comfortable just by doing the little right things over time. He and my grandmother living in Omaha heard about this guy, Warren Buffett. They thought he was really good, nice guy, so they invested some money with him.
Nice.
Their story.
I suppose that was a moderately good idea. You know, if that's what you're going to do.
It was my grandma who worked as a cafeteria lady who she thought Warren Buffett was a nice man. So I think the stock was trading at $10,000 a share when they bought one. My grandma didn't want to do it initially. There.
Yeah. Well done, Grandma.
Yeah, well done, Grandma. And I like to believe I'm a Midwestern guy. I spent time down in Texas. Wyatt will tell you quickly that's where he was born. My wife's in-laws still live in Texas. We thought we were, and they have a big
nice.
And you like to go
and you did kneeboarding there? That's cool.
Yeah. We were living just outside of Austin, Texas. bought a house. I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life. But I was traveling all over the place, really felt called to work, worship, and play all in the same spot. So came to Minnesota to run a real estate company.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. That that for me, travel with the family is like one of my favorite things to do ever. My wife and I were just talking about that last night about where our next travels are going to be and how we want to be able to do it, and never let it stop. So, anytime I talk to a dad who's passionate about traveling and seeing the kiddos want to do it with them, I mean, that's phenomenal. So, hey Wyatt, have you ever been to any other countries? Have you done that yet?
Like countries?
Uh-huh.
No, when I happened to states.
You've been to other states? Okay, very good. Awesome.
I was on Tuesday, Nebraska lots of times.
Yeah.
And where was it? East Coast.
We went to Indiana, we went to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, where James Lake House is at, Vermont, and then we saw Uncle Andrew get married in upstate New York. That was pretty.
Upstate New York is beautiful. I graduated
Yeah.
high school in upstate New York. I love it up there. So, where at in upstate
nice.
you go?
We were in Syracuse. My brother just accepted a position at Colgate, though. He lives in Hamilton,
Okay.
New York now. His twin, I'm the oldest of four boys, his twin lives in New York City. And then
I'm sorry.
the aunt he's talking about, she has a home in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. And it was a really amazing trip for us because
Yeah.
my whole experience with New England was New York City and Boston. Maybe more of that.
Yeah.
You get up there, okay, now I understand what people are talking
Yes.
about.
Yeah. Yeah, I graduated high school right outside of Syracuse. I've got a buddy of mine getting ready to.
nice.
He just retired from the Syracuse Police Department, and so I'm very familiar with that whole area up there. I love it up there. If I could avoid all of the politics of the city, which you can't because everything that happens in the city affects the rest of the state, then I would think about going back there or at least having property up there. But I can't. I have completely cut ties other than my sisters. Like they're still in my life, but other than that, I ain't playing around. All right. So as you were growing up, what would you say so like you, as the older I get, the more I understand about my father and how he chose to father me, and so I could understand more about him. As you were growing up, what were some of the feelings that you had about your dad that maybe A, you confirmed later on, or B, you realized were completely just like way off base?
What was way off base, because that also relates to I didn't grow up in a home where I physically knew how to do a lot of things with my hands. I didn't grow up in a home where there was a lot of intentional masculine direction, what I'll say, right? There were a hobby specifically for young boys. We played sports, right? But the opportunity to be outdoors, to be active outdoors, that was something I always felt was lacking. And it's something that I was drawn to as a dad, because I do believe that God gifts men in certain ways, and there's ways that men bond with one another. And I'm trying to encourage my son in that, right? Like, I didn't grow up with any appreciation for firearms, right? So I was scared of them. And so I spend time now learning to shoot so that we can respect firearms. We're blessed to own property here in northern Minnesota. We can hunt. I didn't do any of that. I wish I would have, because there's so many things that you can connect to Scripture and just connect to one another that way. So learning how to shoot archery there.
Nice.
I think it comes full circle, and I think it kind of shapes the way I think about things, because two things can be true. I do feel like that was a part that was missed, but I was eager for a long time the way I was raised, and I just come around to giving grace. My parents raised 4 kids. My dad was incredibly sick, on and off. Truly almost lost him numerous times. He physically couldn't do things, and that wasn't his fault. He had things that were robbed from him. Frankly, even before I was born, he had cancer. And then mom had to work full time outside the home so that we could all have good insurance, so that she could provide and pay the bills there. Mom got hurt. She was a special education teacher for 40 years. She had a student punch her in the face, and that happened multiple times. But this time she wasn't ready. And it did what's called a contra coup. Her brain bounced, and then 2 weeks later she was administering a test. She fell, face planted on the floor, and she's dealing with Parkinson's and everything from this singular event that happened back in February of 1997. And so I just really limited them. I mean, trying to raise 4 kids on public employee salary at a time when one of them wasn't working. I'm just coming back around to giving more grace there, while at the same time pursuing things that I think are really important for boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that as we're growing older and we start to really put that perspective to how we grew up, not everybody does put that perspective to it, right? Doesn't look back. They look back still with that disdain and that anger in their heart, as opposed to kind of realizing, what was going on, and that was something that I strongly encourage on almost every podcast, is for folks to look back. It's again why I ask these questions, is if somebody's listening and they haven't looked back at how they were raised, to go, you know what? Like, my parents had a lot more going on than I saw at the time, because we're, despite the fact that at 16-year-old boys, we know everything. Despite how we know everything, we were completely oblivious to everything that was going on, right? Because you realize you knew absolutely nothing. And to kind of step back and realize what it is, I think it's freeing for both you and your parents, because, and especially if you talk to your parents about it and say, hey, man, you guys did such an amazing job. And I try to tell that to my dad all the time. For where he came from, he did an amazing job. And I don't want it to come across as, oh, well, you did okay for what you're doing, but like, no, that's like saying, oh yeah, you're really pretty for your age, like, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, like, I understand that, like, you came from a very terrible place, and to have turned out the way you did and to raise me the way you did, I'm impressed. So good on you for kind of realizing that and putting it to action, because, I think that's too many dads, thankfully not most of them that I talk to on here, but I'm hoping that some of them that are listening will if they're like this, they adjust, is they just go down the same exact path their parents were. My dad wasn't involved with me, so I'm just not going to be involved with my kids. Or, my dad beat me, so I'm going to beat my kids. Or my dad did this, so I'm going to do this. And they don't even think about it in those terms. They just walk down the same path that their parents did, because that's just what they saw, So as you were, so let's continue on the path of, you were growing up, you saw all of these things, you saw your parents working through this. How did you then, what did you do after high school? How did high school work for you, and kind of what did you do after high school?
Sure. So high school was really involved in swimming and swimming year-round, and so developed some really close relationships, because you're swimming 2 times a day at 5 a.m. with those people. Went off to college, went to Truman State University. I'll be super impressed if you know where that's at. It's a small liberal high school in Kirksville, Missouri.
Okay.
And college was all set to go to medical school. I didn't want to be a doctor, so pro tip, don't go to medical school if you don't want to be a doctor. And then at that point, I went to work for a nonprofit that was doing leadership development training with college age men, just because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. College, and I'm super grateful for the people I met. I'm in real estate today because of relationships that I made in college, and those are linked to some of the close friendships that I have. In many regards, I look back on decisions I made in college, the way I acted at times in college, there. And so coming out of college, I had a lot of growth to do. And I was fortunate to work for an organization where people built into me. And it was really more of a professional standpoint there. I then kind of re-engaged on a faith journey. And I tell people that it was in Easter 2009 that I found Jesus Christ again as my Lord and Savior. I have certainly struggled on and off since that point, but that's really where my life took a turn. And so from there, I went to work in retail. I worked at Target at their corporate office, and that's where my connection to Minneapolis came from. Target's a good company. I just didn't have a great experience there, so I left after 9 months. Then I went back and became a professional fundraiser. But when I was in Minneapolis, there was a group of guys that was getting together to drink beer and throw $50 a month at the side. And I went just thinking that, hey, this is a good opportunity to meet people and learn a little bit more. I didn't grow up really business savvy. Even basic business concepts estate at that point in time. Well, it was 2011, and there was a subset of that group that said, hey, if you're really interested in making a significant investment, there's 6 guys that are going to meet at Denny's to talk about real estate. 2011, people are honestly asking questions like, is real estate ever going to come back? Right? Like, this has been decimated. And I wrote a check for all the money that I had to my name, which was $3,000 at that point in time. I was renting a room from a high school buddy in Minneapolis. And I didn't really know these guys all that well. I knew one of them pretty well. Like, hey, I'm unemployable. No one's depending on me to eat. If I lose this money, thanks, but I'll make it back. It'll be okay. Yep. And so at that point in time, I jumped into real estate, and really the decision that changed the rest of my life.
Yeah, especially to jump into it in 2011. Phenomenal timing. Yeah. That worked out well, right? Maybe
a lot of those townhomes, they were, I tell people, like, the only analysis we did was these are going for $60,000. You can't build them for under $200,000. And 4 years ago, they were going for $150,000. Like, there's got to be some value here.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those to go. I believe it was Warren Buffett who said that. To go back to him, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. Right? And there was a lot of very fearful people. They just saw a bunch. They just saw bears collapse. They just saw all sorts of housing stuff just fall apart, and they were like, "I am touching nothing." And it was when this was very different, but. So there's rule number 1 of investing is don't lose money. Right? Rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1. There was a guy I used to listen to a podcast. I think it was the Rule Number 1 podcast or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but now I forgot where I was going with this. He's talking about it. I started off looking at. So I'll do a quick backstory for you because you don't really know it. But when I married my wife, I didn't even know what a savings account was. I had no clue. I didn't know what investing was. I didn't like. I was going to college after the Air Force, and when I was in, they give you a paycheck every 2 weeks, which means I have 2 weeks to spend my money, right? Because they're going to give me more money in 2 weeks. So that's just what you did, right? I didn't drink. I didn't do any of this. I didn't party really. Like, I went out with friends and stuff, but that meant that I could spend all my money on my motorcycle. I could spend all my money on on food. I almost never went grocery shopping. You'd look at my fridge and wonder what the heck I ate because I was always going out to eat. So I just wasted all my money. So I started to try to do stock investing without doing any education whatsoever. I was like, when my wife said I should look at real estate, and I kind of chuckled at her and then went and lost money in the stock market because I had zero, my intestinal fortitude for stock market, like stock trading, was like non-existent. I would see it start to dip and I'd sell. Like, I was like, I couldn't handle it. So I would lock in all of my losses immediately. And, now fast forward, when I was really trying to understand what it was, I was listening to things like this podcast was talking about it. And he's like, look, when you're looking at the underarching value of the company you're looking at, and this goes for real estate as well, when you're looking at the underarching value of this company, and they take a massive dip, is the company itself still a strong company for future growth? And are all these traders what's causing it to go down? If that's a yes, then go ahead and buy the dip. Do it, because if it's a good solid company, it's going to go well. And real estate at that time, 2011, was one of those moments. Underarching value of real estate, it's not going away. Like, everybody is still going to need a place to live. So the value is there. You just, everybody's fearful, and you got to figure out how to just jump in and make it happen. So as you were figuring out how to jump in and make it happen, you'd never done this. What did these guys say that convinced you that this was a good idea? And how did you kind of keep yourself in a place where you're like, yes, this is actually a good idea?
Initially, it was purely, I'm by myself every Friday and Saturday. I'm incredibly lonely here. I want to meet some other men. Like, I had started a job where most people, and don't get me wrong, I love going out and having fun as much as the next guy. I graduated. I don't need to go to happy hour every single day. I'm looking for a little bit more mature friends here, and the Twin Cities can be kind of tough to break into. It's a lot of places that people move back to. People will kind of stay in their same rhythms in terms of people they went to high school with, people that they grew up with there. Yeah. And so it was truly to make friends. I believed a lot of what you're saying there, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Millionaire Next Door, and the nonprofit I worked at, some people had chewed me on to real estate of like, here's a great long-term strategy. I didn't really dial in from an investment perspective, say multifamily, the way that we do now. But it was, look, people need a place to live, and over time, this can be a great investment. Right now, I can meet some good dudes and try to find a way to learn more. Okay, well, I'm going to do that. We kept buying townhomes. We buy 4 to 5 a year. And then it was really in 2013 that I got more involved because I had moved away. I was actually in Texas at that time. And there's a group of 6 of us that own the company. I just felt bad. They were doing all this work and I was sitting in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I emailed and simply said, like, what else can I do? And one of the other guys who runs the company with me and said, you could be our call center. We get a lot of calls from tenants. I don't really like listening to them when I'm rehabbing my townhouse.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful. I've got all sorts of tenant stories that I can tell you. I can make you laugh. I can make you cry. But that put me on the ground level of the business. I have done every single job there is to do rental real estate, right? I've been to housing court. I have shown units. I have fixed broken toilets. I've seen the nastiest things that you can imagine. And I'm grateful for that because I believe that it gives you education from the ground up, which helps you appreciate any investment at scale. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, we'll have to look at really large apartment complexes. It's not better for bigger estates. Don't hear me say that. I'm only highlighting this to say that if you want to understand how a 568 unit apartment complex operates, you got to understand how one unit operates. You got to know how people behave in the home that they live in. So Ryan on Fridays has come to do showings with me. He's come to do walkthroughs when people have moved in. I'm hoping the discussion get more sophisticated over time.
Mm-hmm.
You can start going.
Yeah, I would imagine that they will definitely become more sophisticated. Wyatt, are you ready to learn a whole lot more about what Daddy does?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
Stand up and look at him so he can hear you.
Wait. Actually goes to different countries and go to help different apartments.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you been to some of those apartments?
Not out of the state yet.
Not out of the state.
Not out of the state.
Is that fun to you?
Yeah, I can go one.
Yeah. Is it fun to you to go to those properties?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My son does. My son goes to properties with me too.
I'm also cutting up fire. I'm gonna, well, maybe, I'll cut up firewood and make like a little shop of firewood.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Homeschool project we're working on. We do life super unique up here. It's compound living. 2 of the other guys that I own the company with, we are neighbors. And so living in the Twin Cities, COVID, 2020, riots, it was really hard for a lot of reasons. Twin Cities feels like home to me, and to see that happen in a place that feels like home, it pulls your heart out. But I also looked at that and said, I can't raise my kids here. 2 other guys did as well. And we had an urge to get out of the country, raise kids outside, be in a small town there. And we talked a lot about this to my buddy Dustin, who I got to give credit here. He's like, the house is the biggest investment you make. Maybe you have good neighbors, maybe you don't. He's like, well, what if I pick my neighbors? And then what if I could then go buy a property that I could never afford on my own? So we live up here on a river, and we live next to my 2 best friends. One of them has kids that are their age, and so what this is all going in relation to his little business is we have chainsaws and all sorts of tools that we have to use to care for the property, and we start a business cutting firewood. And so I was telling him, like, well, you got to talk to Ben and Dustin. Those are their tools too, and you're going to have to show them a proposal of why they should allow you to cut firewood with their tools, and why you should, they pay the property taxes with me on this land for all that wood, and why they should let you take that wood and do that. So you're getting some real-time insight into some projects we got going on right now.
That is awesome, because those are exactly some of the questions I'll be digging into. So I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about that.
Sure.
How did you guys decide? Just because we're talking about, how did you guys decide to do the homeschool? Was it that right there? Like all the Twin Cities stuff going on, like COVID coming in. Was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do homeschool, because I think before we started, you said you homeschool on Fridays. Talk to me about what that looks like in your house.
So we homeschool every day. My wife leads that, trying to lead kids, but dedicated time, especially Wyatt, because he is one boy in a house of all girls, is getting older. Like, when can you come shadow dad? And so my wife and I do a family huddle, and like one of the things on our family huddle is what manly things can Wyatt shadow you doing this week. And then we do some one-on-ones throughout the week with my kids. Again, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Of like, it's really natural for kids to go to mom, right? How do I make a pivot towards dad? And so my wife will take notes throughout the week of, hey, here's what I'm noticing in the kids that I think you should bring up in your one-on-one. So tomorrow we do our Sabbath. Those are my one-on-one times with the girls. Why and I'll do a breakfast tomorrow. Leno, the 6-month-old, isn't quite ready for one. There. We started thinking about homeschool much before COVID and the riots. And for us, it really roots down on our faith. Like, we want the home to be the center of everything that we do. And for us, we can't get there if we're apart from our children most of the day. A lot of what I'm sharing here has been what's been shared with me. There's a ministry, family team led by Jeremy Pryor there. I don't know if you've seen any of the material. I think it's really applicable here, but he'll talk about, I was on a trip to Israel, and I kept noticing that it was the dads pushing the stroller. And I was like, wow, it's so funny. Well, if you look at Old Testament family, if you look at what it means to train a child, like, then you look at the physical amount of time that's required that you have to spend around the child. I want the tip of the spear to be the home. I want the home to be a celebration of values, but home is where you go to learn. Home is where you go when you're scared. Home is where you go when you want to celebrate. And so that's why we're going to teach at home. And now, as the world we live in has played out, I get very impassioned about where kids go to school, because I think that there are some really evil things happening in state schools there. And I don't say that to win an argument or off my chest and condemn anyone. I'm the son of a public school teacher. I love my mom dearly. I just look at what's happening today, and I don't feel comfortable, don't feel safe for our kids there. And so that just reinforces why we homeschool.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, completely with you there. It was so I was a public school kid my whole life. My wife was private school growing up her whole life. Her mom even worked at the private school there to help cut down on the cost of tuition, of course. So when we were talking about having kids, it's like, oh no, public school for sure, because like I learned so much about life and like what it was coming out into the world. I couldn't imagine coming into the Air Force after private school. Like, would never been exposed to all this stuff. And then and this one, my wife and I were both military, and it was the more that I saw what was going on, and we actually had a child, I was like, nah, private school for sure. I'm totally not putting my kids in public school. It's just not happening. And then now we have the ability to homeschool because I work from home now. I'm not in the military anymore. My wife has one more year left, and I cannot wait for that day to come. But it's like I could not imagine going to public school, especially after a few years of private school. And now with homeschool, like the freedom that I get to be able to take them anywhere we go. Like if I go on a trip, they get to come with me. If I want to teach them about entrepreneurship, cutting wood and making a business out of it, I can. Things that they don't get to learn about. Like I just bought a golf simulator for my son with the state's money for homeschool. Like, so now he gets to learn a sport that he loves in between, like, hey, I'm really tired, Dad, and I don't want to do this math problem anymore. Okay, go hit some golf balls. No big deal. Like you have the freedom because and for me, like not to get too much on a soapbox here, but it seems to me that every single 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-old boy has ADHD. Or perhaps they're 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-old boys and can't sit in a classroom for 8 hours straight. Perhaps that's the case. I mean, could be wrong.
They need to wrestle.
Yes. And, but for some reason, society seems to think that we need to cage all that in because it's going to turn into something toxic, and God forbid, But it was there. I don't know if you know who Vodi Bakum is, but he's a preacher. Was out of California, and now he runs a church in. Is it Zimbabwe? I don't remember. He runs a church/school out somewhere in Africa. But he had said it on one of his sermons, and I was listening to it when my son was still in private school, so it didn't necessarily apply. But it was just another thing that went through my brain. Is he was like, I don't know why we're surprised that when we hand our kids over to Caesar schools for 8 hours a day, that they come home acting more like Caesar than they do like us, and it's like, well, duh, like if I really want to impact my kids, then the best way for me to do that is to, I don't know, be involved in their life. So it means a lot to me to be involved. So I want to throw this back over to you after my little diatribe I just went on, of like, okay, so the involvement that you guys are having, what sort of intentionality are you and your wife, and what's your wife's name? So I don't have to keep just saying your wife. Mandy. Okay, so you and Mandy, what sort of intentionality are you two having? It sounds like already that Mandy is like taking notes through the week on things that you can cover and all this stuff, but I'm assuming it didn't necessarily start that smoothly. So kind of what was the process for you two having these discussion about homeschool, about how you wanted to run the family with intentionality, like it sounds like you guys do now? Yeah, I would imagine. Yes.
The idea that you have to call, just like, why? Like, it all sounds really dorky, to be honest. Like, do we really need to do this? But it was going on with a whole lot of other messiness that is the first couple of years of marriage, right? I think marriage is the centerpiece of a family, and it's really those first couple of years that solidify. And there's data that goes along to show this, right? Like, you get past the first 5 years, the divorce rate falls off a cliff, right? Because you've sorted through all of that. And so as we talked about, like, where are we going? Like, both of us want something different here, but we're not quite sure how to do this. And so then we just started talking to people, largely in church circles, because the faith led us to one another. And then met more people like yourself, and just were willing to take that in. And then it really stems from the idea that the family operates as a team. I can't take credit. These are things that have been blessed to me with and passed down to me. But the family has to take on the identity of a team, right? Well, a team has intentionality. A team practices, right? A team has a strategy. A team has a leader. I don't simply just allow things or just hope that things happen. Right? What I do with my money and my time is how I want to align myself with the gospel here. Well, then I want to be able to talk to my wife about that. And so we've gone through a amazing process of trying to, what's our family vision statement, or and how are we doing that day in and day out. The thing that you'll hear repeated a lot around our house is start bad and then get better. Right? Yeah. So the family huddles were really. There were sorts of family fights, actually, but then, okay, you keep going, and it gets better over time. My wife looked at me like I had four heads the first time I talked about homeschooling, but as you lean in and you're willing to take on something that may be different and accept the idea that, okay, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I want a different outcome. And again, I'm quoting somebody who's not myself right now. I think it's pastor in Cincinnati that I follow, Brian Tone. He's got his podcast, The Aggressive Life. He'll always come out and say, you notice that most kids aren't great? He's like, they're not. So if most kids aren't great, and you follow the outcome, or you follow what most parents do, then you're going to get that outcome, which is the kids aren't going to be great. So if I'm willing to take on something different. Today, that looks like we focus a lot on the week. And we focus on that because I think that is the most important unit of time that comes from Scripture. God talks about things in a week there. Like, in who you are as a person, you have to be that person in a week. And in order to live rhythmically, and I think it's why goals are dangerous things, because they can take you out of what's a weekly rhythm. You have seasonal rhythms there too, but okay, what does our family need to do over the course of a week? So days around our house have themes here, and then when we plan out our week, it all stems from the idea of a Sabbath. They're like resting on one day. Well, what does that mean? That means every other day has a feel there, and every other day is a little bit different depending on what we need to get done as a team there. And then as the team grows, more is expected of it. There's just a level to put it in really practical terms, like with 4 kids, one of which is a 6-month-old right now, more is expected out of Wyatt than I think would be if you were in a smaller household there. When you have 4 kids, there's a level of noise on a per-child basis that we can't tolerate because our team can't get things done, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to know how to get your shoes on and get into the car. Because if mom and dad have to do that for all 4 of you guys, we're just not going to go very many places.
Yeah. No kidding.
So there's practical and biblical application for how we look at our week, and then that drives everything, and the week is ultimately rooted in what we call our Shabbat meal. What do we do in Shabbat?
Eat pizza.
We eat pizza. We want to repeat. We want to make sure that Shabbat today feels different. What do we put on the table on Shabbat?
Tablecloth.
Yeah, who made the tablecloth?
Auntie Grammy.
Grammy made the tablecloth. And that's
Nice.
our time when we pause and we say, hey, we're coming together here to honor God and to spend time resting.
Love it. That is awesome. And well done on answering the questions as well, Wyatt. Because every time I ask my son those questions on the podcast, he looks at me like I'm crazy. Because I swear he does it on purpose to make me look like I'm crazy. Because he knows all these answers, and he'll just be like, "I don't know what you're talking about, Dad." And he'll make up some weird word just to be silly. But one thing I would definitely want to do, and it's going to kind of go into this, is discuss you said each day has a theme, but when you guys were building all of this out, when you and Mandy were building all of this out, like, how did you have like books that you were reading to be able to do this? Did you have what kind of mentors did you decide to look at to help build this out for your family, to get this structure in place?
Sure. I mean, it's all biblically based, but the ministry that really brought it to practical application for us was family teams. It was something I actually dug into during COVID. They do a good master class on how to be an Old Testament father there. And we've continued to take in that content. And I'm sure you can relate to this when there's a couple of key decisions that they can start to domino, right? Like, you meet other people who are homeschooling and who are entrepreneurs. They can do some other cool and interesting things in their life, right? So then you can take that in. And so being willing to step out into those, there's been other people, and you're always tinkering here. We're always tinkering with the week. And we've certainly had times when we've struggled. We're coming out of a period where we did some travel. We really neglected ourselves. I would say our team suffered. I personally suffered for that. And so it's that continual application, but broad brush, what we're going towards is that we want to get away from peer-centered identity. Your identity comes from the family that your Heavenly Father gave you here. It is my job to help you identify and form a relationship with your Heavenly Father. And then there are specific rhythms in the Bible that we can use. I mean, Jesus sat down and had Sabbath meals together. And it's specifically that covenant of rest, and how do we rest and then rest together so that our lives can be integrated. I think it's something that Western families struggle a lot with. And everything I say as someone who struggles too. I pray that no one hears me condemn, but it's hard to be a dad in one context and then say, okay, but this is what I go do for myself. Like, we are constantly looking at our hobbies and what we do, that people can come alongside us, right? Like, I didn't grow up hunting and fishing. I do it now, though, because it's something I can do with my son, right? So we're always very, very careful against anything that takes us away and puts us on even to the structure of our home, right? Like, we have one TV. We spent extra money to get a really big and nice TV because, well, if I want the whole family to hang out together in the family room, I'm going to make the family room cool, right? And so as we designed our home, we built and put this wood-burning stove in there. And it looks cool. It smells great. Provides warmth because it gets cold in Minnesota, at least in most winters. So my favorite thing is in the mornings, all the kids running in the winter and want to go stand in front of the stove just to warm up.
Nice.
So I'm kind of going off track there, but that's just kind of bleeds into everything that we do.
No, I absolutely love it. The idea of bringing the family together at all times in all things is, again, one of the reasons I do this podcast. So the themes, do you know off the top of your head what the themes are for each day? I'm curious.
Yeah, why are you going to help me with this? Okay, because so we have Shabbat, and then Sunday we have football on Sunday. You play, but we call that Ramp Up Sunday. Dad's going to be doing a little bit of office work there.
No, Monster Monday.
Yeah, Monster Monday, because it comes back at us. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Tuesday, Dad tends to work pretty late on Tuesdays. Then working Wednesday, kind of grinds a little bit, but you made it through. You survived tough Tuesday. Then we got slow down Thursday. What do we do on Thursday nights usually? We have a family game night, and then Friday we want to slide into rest. Like it's a real thing. Like you have to practice resting. Yeah, it's on Fridays, and then Fridays we are slowing down so that we can enjoy Shabbat together.
Nice. Yeah, fast on Friday so you can eat that pizza on Saturday. That's right. That's right. So what when you have to do all the travel and everything, how do you kind of keep some of this rhythm still flowing? Because obviously you're not going to be able to do, or maybe you do, but like sitting down doing game night or sitting down eating pizza together on Saturday if you're traveling, if you're going to walk a property or something along those lines. So how do you kind of or what do you do on those times where you have to travel?
It's hard. No two ways about it. As people who look into out-of-state investing, one of the things, I used to do a little bit of coaching, that I tell people, like, you really got to pay attention to this more than you realize, is how easy is it to get to and from that place, right? Yeah. Like, frankly, for me, like, is there a direct Delta flight? Because I get a lot of miles on Delta, so I can get there and back and I can do it in the same day. Man, it's a world of difference if I'm telling my team, hey, Dad's going to be a little bit late tonight, versus Dad has to stay overnight somewhere. And that certainly still happens. So I try to be as efficient as I can. We are doing a lot more investing right now, despite how tough it is in Minneapolis and St. Paul proper. There's a lot I like about the market of Minnesota, specifically the suburbs here. And we have our own management company that we've built. We want to continue to utilize. We've had to learn that lesson the hard way. We've been burned. Plenty of people out there run good third-party management companies, not condemning them, not condemning you if you use one. I just got a lot of scars to show from working with third-party management companies right now, and I want more control.
Yeah.
We can do that here in the Twin Cities, and that's ultimately what called me here, right? Living in Texas was awesome. Loved Austin, Texas. It was a tear-filled decision to leave there, but I'm like, I got to work, worship, and play all in the same place. So I would say travel, you minimize it, and then you try to build your field where your family's at as much as you can.
Nice. Yeah, the direct flights make a huge difference. So because I don't get very many of those out of where I'm at, I just drag my family with me that still screws up the entire ability to make it happen. And with my wife still in the military, I mean, I'm still kind of stuck with her schedule as well. So there's always some give and take, and having grace with each other and knowing that that's part of the process, and having that, like you said, that communication of, hey, I'm going to be a little bit late. I'm going to have I think that a majority of our problems probably stem from communication. If we could have better communication with each other, better communication with our kids, better communication with our employees, better communication with everybody, it's going to solve a lot of the problems we tend to walk around with. So.
This is getting really in the weeds, but it's just been true. It's hard for me to articulate what a regular date night and a family business meeting with my wife does, right? Like, family business meeting, so everyone knows what's upcoming, right? The worst travel is the travel that's unexpected. Wait a minute, you'll be home at next time. You tell me you're going to be home at 9 o'clock. But to the extent you can, everyone's aware. And then we try the rule of are striving to 50 and 2, but we want a weekly date night, and then 2 weekends a year you're going away, right? And I think that's important there. But a weekly date night just creates a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my wife and I used to have those rather often, and now it's been a struggle to get them back on, and we need to get back on the weekly date nights. And dating your wife is always a good idea. So
Yes.
take advantage of those moments for sure. So as you are building out the real estate side of the house and the property management and kind of doing all the vertical integration in there, what are your hopes and plans for the kids as you're kind of building that out? Like, how much involvement do you want kids to have in there? What sort of exposure do you want them to have? What level of group cohesion inside of their family cohesion inside of the business are you looking for?
Really kind of love real estate. It's not something necessarily what I'm looking for. I was involved in real estate before I had kids, but it's one of the things that I've come to appreciate. It's a natural business to bring my kids alongside me. And as I learned as a dad, and I try to pass on to other young dads, you need to build assets, right? For you to be the dad that's truly parenting for your grandchildren, right? Like everything I do now isn't so much about Wyatt. It's about Wyatt's kids. Well, if I'm going to be able to participate in Wyatt's kids' lives, if we're truly going to have a multi-generational family, I need assets. I need avenues to interact there with my children, and then I need to be able to provide resources. In our family, we don't talk about paying for college. Not something we plan on doing.
Yeah.
I do want to set my kids up to be able to start families young. So I want to be able to provide down payments. Right? Why it's a long way away. Things can change, but like if I can get you into a home where then you feel comfortable having kids sooner and our family can continue to grow, then that's fulfilling my role there. And we actually see it from King David. Like you have to set up your fields, and it's something I think dads miss. Like as you are coming into when your kids need you most, I really come to hate the phrase "just wait till they're teenagers." That's when your kids need you most. Well, that's when my kids need me most. I got to be around the most then. And to be around the most then, I got to have opportunities for my kids to come to work with me. I've got to have assets that make it so I don't have to go into the office every single day. So real estate, I see providing that. It's an incredibly old profession. I think it'll be around for a long, long time, and I think it will continue to check those boxes for a team.
Absolutely. I don't foresee it going anywhere, right? It's gonna have its ups and downs. There's gonna be difficulties. Like right now, it's a little bit of a difficulty inside the multifamily world, as I'm sure you're well aware.
Yep.
You know who Andrew Cushman is?
Oh yeah.
So I was on a call that he was on recently, and he was talking about like over the last year they've done like 640. They've underwritten like 640 deals and bought 0 of them. And it was like, I feel so much better hearing it from somebody like Andrew Cushman because like he's really good in this space. And it's like, man, because I felt the same thing. I'm like, man, I just cannot get things to work. But those struggles I think it's good for our kids to see those struggles and hear about those as well. And like, hey, not everything is rainbows and butterflies. And to do what you said is involve them in as much as possible. My son gets to hear me on almost all of these phone calls. He gets to hear me on a lot of the business things, gets to see the frustration in my face, and I get to talk to him about it. And Daddy, what are you looking at? And what are you reviewing? I was pulling up numbers on a deal right before this call. Right before my last call. But I think the exposure for the kids is vitally important, and to me, it's a lot of fun. That doesn't mean that I'm saying, "Hey, you're going to be a real estate investor," because I want him to do whatever he wants to do. I want all of my kids to do what they want to do, but I at least want to have the exposure so they know what's coming and what's not. But that's part of us setting up that future for, to your point, the generations on moving forward. So, what is kind of your goal? Where are you at right now? Like, investment wise, kind of what you're doing apartment buildings, like what's your portfolio look like now? What are you trying to grow it to?
Sure. So we own approximately, it gets kind of like the funny numbers where you look at where everyone, our brand is Endurance Capital, the Drew Whitson contact time partners with our company, Minnesota Capital Management, about 2,500 units under management, 5 states. We do have some retail. I would say the best performing investment right now is a retail investment here in the Twin Cities. And then we also have some exposure to industrial there as well. And I would say our current portfolio is probably indicative of a lot of folks. We're still out there active trying to grow. We're 25 to 30% off on everything. Getting a little bit closer. We've seen that bid-ask spread come in a little bit, but just can't make it work. So
Are you
that's
still
been
putting in
flushing a lot
offers, or are
here.
you just not even putting in offers when you're 30%
We're
off?
putting in offers, but
Good.
we're making people mad along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's where we
But to
are.
me, again, that goes to the communication side of the house. Like, communicate with the broker already, but like, look, like, it's not 2021. It's not where we're at. Like, these are my numbers, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if you find something else, I'm not going to be offended. Go sell to somebody else, just like you shouldn't be offended by me putting in an offer. So
90% of our portfolio is doing just fine. Like
Yeah.
long-term fixed rate debt. We got into some pretty heavy value adds where we executed our business plan, but we had some short-term debt. So we've got about 3 or 4 deals right now that are all hands on deck, and it's really hard. Right? It happened quite naturally in 2021, where you leased well at pro forma rents, raised rent above pro forma, and we've got a couple of markets where that's just not happening.
Yeah.
It's been a real struggle there, and we've dealt with all sorts of nastiness. You don't hear get into this. And the contractor didn't do his job, overbilled you, and put a lien on your property, and you're fighting with your contractor and the lender because they want the lien gone.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot of attorneys. It's stuff you learn about in times like these.
Oh yeah, yeah. We were just going through a lot of that. I mean, the amount of time it took us to get the contractor did not pull the permit as discussed. Things kind of didn't go the way that we wanted it to, and then the city was just asking question after question after question, and we were halted on all of our rehab, and it just like sucking us dry with money. And it's like, well, this is part of what happens. One person complains to another, and it's one of those that this is part of the business, and it's bound to happen. We're going to run through the issues, and you just work through it. But now, when you were telling that story, that's how I know that Todd is how we got connected, because I'm friends with Todd. So that makes sense. For those who are listening, right before we started recording, we were trying to figure out how we actually got connected because we didn't remember. But now I know, because it was Todd Dexheimer, which sadly we just had to send an email to him. We have to re-record the podcast because his audio completely got lost. So I feel terrible now. But it only like 20 minutes of it came through. But yeah, he's a solid dude, and I could totally see, especially now that I know how you guys are partners, that makes a lot of sense to me. So Wyatt, I got a question for you. What do you want to do when you grow up? Okay. An electronics what?
What?
Papa is my wife's dad,
Oh, okay.
who Wyatt is very close with, and
Nice.
I can build everything, kid.
Yeah.
Well, right now, he retired on his second career, electrical contractor. So we go down to Texas. What do you and Papa do?
Nice. Do you get electrocuted?
You go to job sites, don't you? You go to supply shop and watch Papa negotiate on those important things. He talks to Rob a lot. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Being able to hang out with your grandparents is an absolute blessing that I hope you get to enjoy for a long time, Wyatt.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So, what is your favorite thing about your dad, Wyatt?
About the trip when he's back.
Yeah. You like hearing about his trips? Ooh, nice. Yeah. Okay, so it's about the snacks, not about dad. I got it. I see. What do you think your dad could do better? Ooh, helping you with your bank account? That's a solid request. For sure. So when I asked my son that, he asked me to spend a little bit more time in the middle of the day with him. So then we built out in the calendar 30 minutes in the middle of the day, 3 days a week. That's just me going out and hanging with the boys. Whether sometimes we ride the four-wheelers in the backyard. Sometimes we play a board game. Sometimes we play Daddy Get 'em, which is when I chase my kids around the house and we hope we don't bash our heads against the wall. You never know what we're going to do, but it's 30 minutes of just them time. So it's a wonderful moment. So anytime you think Daddy can do something better, you let him know in a very polite and respectful way. And then after we get off this call, Daddy's going to say, "Don't ever tell me that again." No, I'm kidding. He won't do that. He won't do that. He wants to hear it. So what's the to go back to the vision for growth, right? You're at around 2,500 units with various different things in industrial and whatnot. Are you guys planning to just kind of maintain what you have? You said you're always looking for more and whatnot, but where do you see your biggest? This is a better question. Where do you see your biggest opportunity for growth right now, considering the market?
Expanding self-management.
Okay.
As you grow in real estate, Drew Whitson is the other partner. Drew is part of a mastermind with Andrew Cushman, where maybe Andrew said this, but they took it away. They're like, super wealthy guy that we know in real estate.
Yeah.
And it's not to suggest that the goal is to be super wealthy, but like, you look at the people who are really good at this and they self-manage. Right? Yep. Because it ultimately gives you, and it's not about extra fees. It's all about how do I ensure a quality product. And there's a lot of people who work hard at third-party management. I'm not knocking it, but your interests are fundamentally disaligned. Yeah. When you look at what the property needs long-term versus an outside company there. And so what we're trying to do is to grow and grow density so that we can bring more management in-house. I think what's important for us too is we get excited about growth because it's a greater chance for impact, right? Mm-hmm. You bring more people into a company, well then I can have an impact on you. We can share our values here, and that's a greater opportunity to distill our values across the world. So I don't have a number that we can say, hey, we want to be at X by X date. We probably should. But that's kind of the way we think about things right now.
Yeah. I think that the downfall about putting a number on things is, one, you feel bad if you don't reach it. But if you hit a market like this, then you're like, oh, well, I had to adjust it because of this. And then it's like, okay, well, did I really have to adjust it because of this? Or did I just say that I had to adjust it because of this? And it's like, you don't want growth for growth's sake. Growth with intentionality is where you want to be. And right now, you're being intentional about what you want to do is grow on the self-management side. Which one of my buddies, my business partner in the education company, that's exactly what he just did. You know, he went to his own management company now. He's starting to create that, buy smaller apartment buildings that his management team can manage themselves, and creating that vertical integration. Again, to your point, it's not about getting rid of the 3-4% management fee that we're paying. It's about creating the systems and processes that bring in a quality product every single time across your entire portfolio. That you're not, oh well, this product over here is moderately okay from that property manager, but this product over here is amazing from this property manager. Like, no, like that's not a. If you want to have a brand behind yourself with that, then bring it internal is by far where you need to be. So I love that you're going about that right now with the management side. What? No, you go ahead. We talk about a lot about what?
We talk a lot about the value, share investment thesis here in apartment buildings. An apartment building itself doesn't really have piece of land, right? And it's a pretty small piece of land, even for a larger piece of property. Not like you're a farmer, but a real estate.
Yeah.
The value is in those leases.
Yeah.
So the value is in the people. Like, those tenants are incredibly, incredibly important. Even if you just want to look at it purely from a business perspective, tenants follow people, right? Every apartment has 4 walls and a door. But it's where do they feel comfortable? Where do they feel heard? And so it's been a real transition point for us to think of ourselves, we're not real estate investors. We're business owners. And I have to spend more of my time coaching and directing people to support real estate than I seemingly do actually evaluating real estate, because they're what drives it out.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's I don't like to say the customer is always right because, gosh darn it, the customer is not always right. But the customer is still the customer, and that's where the money comes from. So, and that's where the business is made. So, treating them properly and making sure that things are taken care of well is what you can do. And when we've had the same issue, like you said, of getting burned with third-party property management, and it just the amount of money that I've wasted and watched flown out the door from either mismanagement or any number of things is ridiculous. So the hard part that I had before was, and I'm curious because I know that you're in two different spots as well, at least two different spots, is I was bouncing around all over the world being in the military. So it was like I bought where it made sense at the time, not necessarily in one spot. And when you're trying to vertically integrate, it makes a lot more sense to be pretty local with each other. So how are you kind of managing you said the Southeast as well as up where you're at in Minnesota? So kind of how are you managing building self-management across those two arenas?
We're not growing a lot in the Southeast right now.
Okay.
We want to grow mostly in and around Minnesota,
Gotcha.
I would say. And, people out there can prove me wrong. But I really believe that you have to become, as you grow, you have to become more and more focused. So the value from real estate comes from the fact that it is inefficient, right? A home in Virginia, I apologize, I don't know where you're based in,
Florida.
Is going to be different. Where are you based?
Florida.
But a home in Florida is going to be different than a home on a corner in Sandy, Minnesota. And so it is your ability to take advantage of that is where you can create value. You can only see that, though, if you are hyper focused, because real estate is hyper local there. And so it is your ability to be present. The amount of times I've been burned by contractors because I wasn't there every day just to make sure people showed up. But you know where I don't have that issue as much? In Minnesota, where I can go walk the property and right?
And they know
I have that issue where I'm a plain flight. Yeah, of course they do. When they know the boss can stop by at any time, projects get done on time. When they know you're a plain flight away, everything is missing timelines and over budget. 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And so it is your ability, and then when you look at how nuanced real estate is, right? Like think about how many different ways counties in the same state can look at property taxes, right? And so that is where and how you find value. And my thesis is that as you become a better operator, you become a better investor. So you become a better operator, the more focused you are.
Yep, I completely agreed. I love that thought process. So as you're building this out, and you said you want the kids to be involved in everything in the business as much as humanly possible. What sort of intention have you and your partners talked about to actually? Because it's one thing to say I want them to be involved; it's another thing to actually get them involved. So, have you talked about it with your partners on how you want to bring them into the fold? Like whether it's actually turning them into W-2 employees, or if it's just cursory bringing them on the walks and stuff like that. What kind of conversations are you and your partners having on that?
Right now, within Endurance, it's pretty cursory. You guys can think similarly. Like Todd's brought his son to come and do walks with him. His son has watched him hold, which I think is awesome there. And we talked about wanting our kids to be involved. We haven't really put strategy behind that yet. So it's kind of funny. Endurance is through and Minnesota started just because we've been doing things together longer. Those conversations have progressed further, right? Like that's even distilled down into how I live, right? Don't pay attention, but we live on this compound together because it's been a decade plus where the conversations talking about what it looked like there. So the answer to your question is it's a pretty broad spectrum from coming to fruition here on the compound to people with like-minded kind of cursory stuff within Endurance.
So I think that one thing I coach people on and talk to people about all the time is the importance of a partner, like a good partner that you've had the conversations with. I've gone through a lot of stuff with bad partners and taken a lot of effort and money spent on bad partners. And you're already alluding to the conversations you guys have had over the years and all of this stuff. So how important has it been for you and your partners to actually communicate these things? And have you had any of those partners that I was just kind of alluding to that did not go so well? And what were some of the issues that caused those to not go well?
So I'll say this. In taking the real estate course, everything I've learned here, doing with others, right?
Mhm.
So your partnerships are your source of knowledge, and real estate is inherently a team sport. You cannot go it alone.
Mhm.
As a lone wolf, from anything from how loans are structured to all the different needs that go along with it. It forces you to work with other people, and you're going to spend a large amount of time with other people. Like, it seems at odds to me to do it with people you don't share those
Yeah.
values with. And so being upfront about who you are, what you're looking for, is important because it's going to drive a huge portion of your life, right? If my partner's not comfortable with how I talk about my faith, if my partner's not comfortable with bringing my children into the fold, there's inherently going to be conflict here.
Mhm.
We haven't had partnerships in terms of anyone doing anything fraudulent or lying, stealing, anything of that nature. We are working through some stuff within our company, Minnesota Capital Management, just 6 guys who bought a townhome and painted it and all screwed the tenants together to life,
Yep.
right? People are moving to other countries. One partner is now the CEO of a company, and so it's like, what time do I have to give
Yep.
to this here? And as the company's grown into something that none of us ever thought possible, well, okay, that has consequences that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, again, the communication between you all to make sure that you understand where it is, and that's one of the reasons I encourage folks all the time. Like, and this is it, in general, especially when I'm working with our military members who are bouncing around all over the world. If you're buying a property, like, don't go and say, hey, me and Matt are going to do this 50-50 company, and this is what we're going to buy everything in. Like, treat each property differently, because by the time, if you guys are definitely going to make this a long-term thing, maybe Matt takes a CEO spot and Adam's not going to be able to do, or Adam's going to have to take over more of it. So maybe the next property I need to own 80% and he only owns 20% as opposed to 50-50 and all that. Like, there's so much that life throws at you. It's not just about somebody, being fraudulent or anything, but having the conversations up front and strategically setting yourselves up is extremely important. And I think that, you kind of hit on it a little bit there with, is the partner okay with me bringing my kids in all of this stuff or whatnot? Like, have the difficult conversations up front, and what you guys are both actually wanting to get out of it is unbelievably important, in business, in life. I think with your wife, like, before you get married, have those difficult conversations. Goodness gracious. I thank God every day, though, my wife did not talk to me about finances, because she might not have ever married me if she knew my financial understanding, but so thankfully she made a misstep there, and I'm thankful for the said misstep, but have the difficult conversations in partnerships. Have the difficult conversations in your relationship with your spouse, because man, oh man, that can go wrong very quickly. One of the examples I give to people all the time is, like, let's say Matt, you and I decide to partner on this thing, or we're talking about partnering on a thing, and you're like, hey, I want to give backpacks to the students, to all the kids, in September before they go back to school, or August before they go back to school, and I love having like a barbecue at the property once a quarter, and just bring everybody together for community. And I'm over here going, well, the numbers that I see are, and I want to make sure that we save every dollar in the company, because you never know when this thing's going to happen or that thing's going to happen. There is nothing wrong with either one of those. But there is a problem with the two of you guys getting together to buy a property, because you guys aren't going to see things the same way, and you guys aren't going to understand, like, where you're going to go. And, like, hey, I really want to bring my kid around all the stuff. And, oh, no, I think there's a safety problem with that, or, I don't want them to see that. Okay, well, then that's not the best time to be a partner. So, again, have those conversations. So good on you for not having any of the very difficult partnership problems, because to your point, when and I have gone through some of those masterminds, the larger masterminds, and all of that, and got partnerships across a couple of those different groups. But when you really are breaking bread with each other and, like, living life together, it's a different level of partnership than it is going through some training together. So I love that you guys are pushing that and moving that direction, or staying in that direction, and have been very successful in that. But as we're getting close to kind of wrapping it up a little bit, I want to throw it over to you, Matt, and kind of say, hey, what questions do you have? What things have you really wanted to cover on this that we haven't really gotten to yet? Because I would love to kind of keep the conversation flowing if you've got something that you wanted to cover.
I think what sticks out to me is obviously something that's on my mind, given the age of my kids, and it's a thing that seems obvious in the rearview mirror. I just kind of hit it recently, and so to speak directly to dads out there, dad's involvement goes like this over time, right? As long as you're breathing, you're still a father, and so that means that you don't get to just peace out when your kids turn 18 and get out of the house. Like, they need you more every day, and they need specifically dads more. I've got some new fathers in my life, and they ask me for advice. And I'm like, well, it's kind of interesting. Like, the first 6 to 12 months, like, you love your child by loving their mother, because you'll see God's design in such an amazing way. Like, your wife just knows how to do things. She knows what this baby needs, and she takes over.
Yeah.
And she's going to take something to the most vulnerable stages of life and give it life. But then, as that child grows, they need their dad more. Set up your life so that you can be involved. And that has specific economic consequences, right? There are seasons of life as a dad where you may be away from home slightly more than you will be during other ones, so that you can set up your fields so that you're blessed with passive income or other revenue streams later on, so that you can parent and lead. I think so often we get stuck at this generation, right? Really, as a dad, you're parenting your grandkids. So I do real estate. I think about long-term cash flow because I want to be able to parent my grandkids, right? And I can't do that if I'm still going into the office 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely not wrong there, and that's again one of the reasons that you and I both have our oldest kiddos hanging off our shoulders right now, right? So it's an absolute blessing to be able to do it and to be able to serve our families and to be able to, like I tell Adam, my goal is to raise him to be a better man than me, and I can't do that if I send him off to school somewhere that he's learning from other men that aren't what I'm looking for my son to follow. And so be as involved as you possibly can be. Like, to your point, I mean, just those first 6 months, it's mom. Everything comes from mom. I mean, literally. Life is coming from mom at that point, but man, oh man, can you be an amazing representative of what it means to be a good father, a good husband inside the house, and show your kids, because they catch a whole lot more than you think they do. So hopefully our boys are catching, or all of our kids are catching what we're hoping they are, and we're not representing fatherhood in a poor way and representing Christ in a poor way. We should be doing everything we can to show that. So I appreciate what you're doing in your family, what you're doing in your business, how you're pushing forward. I want you to be encouraged by staying active in that. It's exciting stuff. I love what you're doing and bringing Wyatt around to various different spots. I'm sure Wyatt is loving it as well. I can tell he does, because he hangs on his dad like a magnet. So that's awesome. But I thank you so much for jumping on, Matt. It was an absolute pleasure to be able to chat with you, get to know you a bit more. Hopefully we can actually meet in person one of these days. I'll come up there and see the compound, and the kids can go hang out together. Yeah, thank you very much. And if you're ever down here in the Florida area, in the Tampa area, you let me know, and we'll go to the beach together. So, but if somebody wanted to reach out to you for one reason or another, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Matt Brawner, Brawner. They can send me an email, Matt@Endurus, ENDURUS Matt@EndurusCapital.com.
Absolutely love it. We'll have that down. We'll have the links in the show notes. For those of you who are listening, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Please reach out to Matt, subscribe, comment. Of course, only good comments and good reviews. You can leave all the garbage somewhere else. But thank you so very much, everybody, for listening. Thank you again, Matt. Thank you, Wyatt, for joining us. Did you have fun, Wyatt? Are you sure? 100%?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
Thanks, guys.